Okay, so apologies for the last video. Not that anybody's watching these, but if there's, 4 or 5 of you out there who are watching these Blu-ray videos and you're wondering why part 2 is so out of focus and you couldn't really see much, I filmed the whole thing, and I honestly felt like I had a lot of good things to say, and I felt like it was a pretty good video, and then afterwards I realized a lot of the shot wasn't in frame, but I'm not gonna go back and film an hour's worth. I'd already messed up a few times, so it was just, I'm sorry. Again, most of these are just for my keepsake. I can't keep all these videos on my phone, so it's like I'll just upload them to YouTube and kind of look back on them when I get older and see what my views were on stuff. Without further ado, though, let's get into this shelf. It's one of my favorite shelves that I own. I call it Murderer's Row, because it's really just a Murderer's Row of great movies, just one after another, and, alright, let's just hop into it. Gone Baby Gone. Really good directorial debut from Ben Affleck, and I think Casey Affleck's a really good actor. I really do. Everything I've seen him in, I like him, including American Pie. It's one of those things. It's a weird little cameo, and I remember seeing him in this when I was 14. I was like, Ben Affleck's brother's in this. It's a good movie. You gotta check it out. Morgan Freeman's good in it too. The Town, my favorite Ben Affleck directed movie, and one of his best performances easily. And Jeremy Renner obviously steals the show. Everybody knows that. This is the one time I think Jeremy Renner does a really good job. For the most part, I find him to be kind of a run-of-the-mill actor. In this, though, it's like he put his whole soul into it. And this movie, it's a really good kind of remake of Point Break. It's kind of what it feels like to me, anyways, when I watch it. It's a better remake of Point Break than the real Point Break remake. Argo, the movie that won him all of his awards, and I think The Town probably should have, but this is still a good movie nonetheless. And any movie about the making of a movie, even if it's a fake movie, you got my attention. And I wish Argo was a real movie about the making of a movie rather than a fake movie just to get people out of the country. Gran Torino. Yeah, get off my lawn, Zipperhead. One of my favorite movies ever made. I think it was in my top 50 list, wasn't it? If it wasn't, I failed. This is his best movie, I'd say, of the last 25 years. I don't feel like that's a controversial thing to say, unless I'm missing one that I just can't remember. But this truly is one of the better Clint Eastwood movies, period. He is just so awesome and badass. Even as an old man, would not want to pick a fight with that guy. The Fighter. Hey, what are you doing over there, Christian Bale? Mark Wahlberg back at it again, being annoying, and Christian Bale jumping out of windows to escape people. It's a great movie. The fighting is the stuff I like the least about it. I actually just like the character stuff between these two brothers that are so different. And the performance by Christian Bale is always good. $1 Million Baby. I don't love this movie, but I just felt like I had to own it because I think Clint Eastwood's awesome, and I do think he's good in this, and Morgan Freeman's good. I'm not a huge Hilary Swank fan, though, and I don't know, I just can't buy her in this role for the most part. And Jay Baruchel, kind of an underrated role in this, where he just gets his ass kicked. Warrior. It's not one of the more rewatchable sports movies for me, but this is kind of my sports section where I just had a few fighting movies. This is kind of like a Rocky movie, but UFC version, basically. It's the same sort of thing, and two brothers go head to head, and Tom Hardy's great. Nick Nolte really is the guy that shines in the movie, though, for me. You should call offense on that shit, Dare. I love American History X. I'm really happy that Edward Norton kind of takes over whenever he makes a movie, and he just makes them better. If we didn't have him, I don't know if this movie would even be half as good. Because you listen to Tony Kaye talk, and he was unhinged. Screaming and going on a tirade about how Edward Norton hijacked his movie. Well, without you, you wouldn't have a movie people still talked about, Mr. Kaye. It just wouldn't be a thing. Primal Fear, another really good Edward Norton performance, and I like Richard Gere. He's a really good actor of the 90s and late 80s. Edward Norton, though, you want to talk about great performances. This has you really convinced, even if you know the ending, Every time I watch it, I'm almost convinced he's innocent, and then you watch the end, and it's like a 360 whirlwind every time. Alright, Fight Club. I like Fight Club. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but I really enjoy it for what it is anyways. It's a commentary on what it's like to be a lonely man. So I think most men can agree, because most men are lonely. So you watch this and you can identify with a lot of what he's going through for the most part. And Brad Pitt, hilarious and good in this movie. And like always, this is like, I had 3 back-to-back Edward Norton movies. One of my favorite actors, bar none. Training Day. I thought I was going to hate this movie, and I pushed it off for years and years and years and years, and I only watched it for the first time this year, and I instantly got it because I liked it that much. I even got it on DVD before this because I just needed a way to watch it. I really like it. I haven't really rewatched it. I probably should. It's been a couple months now. This really brought me around. A few movies did on Ethan Hawke. That and Lord of War. Before that, I didn't really think I liked Ethan Hawke. The Shawshank Redemption. I've seen this an unhealthy amount of times for a movie that is 2.5 hours long and about prison. But this is just the perfect movie. You know, people have this #1 best movie ever made. I cannot disagree with it. I can't. It's not my #1. I don't even know where I placed this on my favorite movies list. It's got to be in there, though. If I didn't, I hate myself so much. The top 50 list was just a flawed idea, because you always forget movies. But this really is... I went through a phase in high school where this was the first movie I watched where it opened my eyes to what movies could really be. Because before this, I watched a lot of surface-level action and everyday stuff that everybody watches on Netflix. But this was the first movie where it was a real deep dive into somebody's character. And I loved every minute of Andy Dufresne's struggles and story. We've got The Green Mile. If you don't cry watching this, you have no soul. It tears me apart every time I watch this. Even though I've seen it 100 times at this point, it's so sad, and I love the time period it's set in. Tom Hanks, great performance, but it's really Michael Clarke Duncan that steals every single scene in this movie that he's in. He's one of my favorite actors, period. It's a shame he died so soon, because he was a damn good actor, and like I mentioned in the first part of the, maybe first, second part, when he's in the island, I know he's not even really in the movie very long, but when he's running through the hallway, it's one of the most memorable scenes in movie history for me. No Country for Old Men. Not one of my, this is one of the only movies on this shelf that I'm kind of on the fence with. I have it with my great movies because it's considered a great movie by others, but for me it would be kind of in the middle. It's okay. And I wouldn't jump on the hate train, I wouldn't jump on the fan train. I just think it's run-of-the-mill for me, and I don't know what to think of it. I gotta rewatch it. But I like all the actors in it, so I feel like I should like it. There Will Be Blood. Yes. Take your milkshake, and I drink it up. This is one of the best movies ever made. It really is. And I pushed this off forever. I don't really know what I was doing with my life. I just kept pushing this off, and then I finally watched this and I realized this is the Western I was always missing. It's not even really it's a Western setting. There's no real fighting, action, or any of that sort. It doesn't need it, because the story's so damn incredible that you're just hooked on every single thing that's happening. The Prestige. My favorite Nolan movie. I watched this in high school in film class, and it was one of those moments where my eyes really opened. It was like, there's movies this good, and Christopher Nolan should have done stuff like this. He should have stuck to stuff smaller scale. He started doing his more big budget, up his own ass type movies, and I've never cared for most of them except for Inception. This is his best movie. And David Bowie's really good as Nikola Tesla. The Warriors. Another movie I just watched for the first time this year. This is part of my Christmas bundle that I went on a tear to buy movies that I'd never seen. This was one of them. And I'm glad I got it. I'd heard a lot about it my whole life, and I'd seen clips and I knew references and stuff, but seeing the movie itself really helps feel it, and I love it. Warriors! Usual Suspects. Now, this is a very predictable movie, yet it's still good, and people still talk about it 30 years later, and it's still considered one of the better Kevin Spacey movies and better movies of that decade. So it must have done something right, because even I like this movie, and you just knew what was happening from the start. It was very obvious that Kevin Spacey was the bad guy, Kaiser Soze, yet you still watch and almost believe that he's not. So, it's a good movie. Titanic. It's in my top 10 for sure. I became obsessed with Titanic because of this movie, and now I would say I know a lot about the ship because of this and James Cameron, so I thank him for that, because, I mean, I probably would have been interested regardless, but the movie really helped ignite that interest, and I go through phases at least once a year where there's like a month out of my year where all I watch and consume is Titanic content to try and learn more, and I just love it. And it's a very depressing story, but without it, we might not have the safety on our ships that we have today. The Revenant. Can't really believe he won his Oscar for this. You know, he was fine in it, and the movie's fine. It's just, it's not Oscar worthy, you know? Like, it never seems to be the movie that you expect to win. It's like, that, really? It's alright. I think Tom Hardy's better than him. Talking like he's got marbles in his mouth. Blood Diamond. That's for breaking my TV, brew. I adopted brew into my vocabulary because of this movie. It's a really good one. It really is. I wouldn't put it in my most rewatchable category by any means, but whenever I kind of want to feel dark and seedy and gross, I put this on. And the ending, you know, it's good, yet Danny Archer dies. Spoiler. The Wolf of Wall Street. I've seen a new thing online for people saying they don't like this, and it's insanity. This is one of the best movies of the last 20 years. Not even a debate. It really is. Maybe even top 5. Martin Scorsese always just knocks it out of the park. I don't know, like, the guy was a gift from the gods when it comes to film. He has given us so many classics, and this one I watched a little too young. I think I was 12 when I saw this, and it changed my life forever. Seeing Margot Robbie. Not just that, but the acting, everything. That was the first Scorsese movie I ever saw. Shutter Island. It's a good one-time watch. I would never recommend to buy this. I didn't buy this movie. I think I got it for Christmas one year. It's good. It's just, once you've seen it, you've seen it. And there's nothing really to decode once you've seen it. The Departed. Another great movie. And I stopped going to a movie store when the guy that I was buying this from said this movie was shit. It's like, so I'm buying a movie from you and you're saying it's bad when it's obviously not. And that's just such a terrible opinion in itself that I don't want to give that person any money. Unbelievable that somebody could not like The Departed. Like, the cast in itself makes me want to jump for joy. It's like, this is the best cast you could possibly assimilate in a time of that era, 2006, I believe this came out. So good. Like, Jack Nicholson, she felt funny. Perfect. Gangs of New York. I like this movie a lot. And again, Daniel Day-Lewis, when you hear the story of how they had to coax him into doing this, it's even better. They had to send DiCaprio out to convince him. And, like, Daniel Day-Lewis is this very weird guy who, if the role's right for him, he'll do it. But if it's not, he's really not going to do it. And he'll let you know of it. So, you know it's going to be at least a decent movie when you're watching him, because he's so good as every character he plays, and he just goes into the role, camouflages to the point where you can't even really tell it's him. And Bill the Butcher. Casino. I love Casino, but I don't know how someone could say they like this more than Goodfellas. It's a great movie. It's just about 25 to 30 minutes too long. And besides that, it's great. I just think there's really 30 minutes of fat you could have cut out with this. Nicky Santoro, though. One of the best characters in a Scorsese movie, for sure. Joe Pesci always does great. Speaking of Joe Pesci, am I finding you like I'm a clown? Goodfellas. This is my favorite mob movie ever made, originally called The Wise Guys. So I guess that title's still out there for a movie. Maybe there's already been a Wise Guys movie, I just can't remember. Goodfellas really is a masterpiece. You know, there's no real main character, but I think Ray Liotta is a damn good Henry Hill. Obviously De Niro's great, and you've got Joe Pesci as Tommy, which is really memorable. Raging Bull. I want to like this more than I do, but some of the action is so obviously choreographed that it just pulls me so out of the movie when you're watching the punches and the fights. They don't look real whatsoever. It's still a good movie, though, and Joe Pesci, again, great performance. Taxi Driver, my favorite Scorsese movie, and it's probably my favorite 1970s movie, and top 10 movie, top 15 movie of all time. It's just utter perfection. Gives you, it's just like Fight Club. It's like the perfect movie if you're a lonely dude at any age, at any time of your life that you can relate to this. It's just a great story. You wouldn't have any movies like that nowadays. You just wouldn't. Donnie Brasco. It's a good mob movie, like a one-time watch, but I have no intentions of putting this in anytime soon. My favorite Brian De Palma movie, my favorite Al Pacino movie, and it's my third favorite movie of all time. I love Scarface. I quote this so much, and my friend and I watch this quite often when we hang out. I just wish I could visit Miami in the 1980s. Not to mention, I just think Al Pacino was born to play this role. He really was. Like, Tony Montana was his role that he just shined at. Like, he's great in The Godfather. He's great in Carlito's Way, which I think is a great movie too, and Sean Penn's good in it, but he was just perfect for Scarface. Anyway, on a Carlito's Way. Really good movie. I think you gotta check this out once in your life. It's, not rewatchable for the most part. This whole shelf, it's not full of rewatchable movies for the most part. They're great movies, but I don't know if you really want to be rewatching something like Carlito's Way every day or something. Collateral. This is a more rewatchable movie for sure. I've seen Collateral many times, and this is Tom Cruise's best performance in my opinion. Besides, what was the other movie the other day that I said was one of his best as well? Doesn't matter. This is easily his best performance, alongside a few others. Damn good movie. And Michael Mann decided to film this all in digital, which was a very bold decision at this time. And it doesn't bother me that much. It used to, but I've kind of gotten used to it. Heat. Another great Michael Mann movie. And Val Kilmer, any movie with him, please sign me up. One of my favorite actors ever. I just love the face-off you get between De Niro and Pacino in this movie at the end at the airport. So good. And this whole movie is just great. And this is a movie done well, like a 3-hour movie done right. Every minute counts. It deserved the runtime it got. American Beauty. This is the movie that makes me just sad that Kevin Spacey did what he did. You know, because you watch this and you feel bad you're watching it, enjoying it because it's such a good movie, and then you remember how horrible of a human being he is, and it makes it tough. But this is damn close to a perfect movie. It's so good. You hear people talk about this all the time for a reason. It's referenced in basically every TV show all over the world. It's referenced like crazy. This shot in particular with the rose petals. It's very memorable. And the scene where he's working out in his garage as a 40-year-old man naked is something that I aspire to do when I'm older. Godfather Part 2. I like it, yet it's still overrated. There's this sub-genre of people, or sub-genre of the population. I don't even know what you'd want to call it, but people who have jumped on the train of this being better than the first one. That started about 15 years ago. And everybody seems to have that opinion now, when it's very obvious the first movie's still better in every way. It really is. This was more of a passion project. The first movie was more of an actual story. You know, you've actually got a narrative in this movie that follows front to back. The second movie is so damn slow, and I don't like to complain about runtime and boring, but it's 3.5 hours, and it drags and drags, and I think De Niro does a terrible job as a young Marlon Brando. I really do. I think he's just a terrible fit for that role. So that just took me out of it instantly, because I cannot see him as the same person. This first movie just does everything right for me. This Marlon Brando, one of my favorite performances ever, is Vito. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I would not change a thing about this movie. Forrest Gump. You get 4 movies in one with this, and that's the beauty of it all. A lot of my friends don't like this, and people my age just don't care for Forrest Gump, which makes me really sad, because I grew up loving this, and I still love it. I've been able to kind of see how bad of a person Jenny was the whole time. I get her childhood was bad, but the way she treats Forrest in the movie is downright embarrassing. It really is. Saving Private Ryan. I can just only imagine how hard this would be to watch if you were a part of any war of any kind, let alone part of the Normandy battle. My grandfather fought in it, so even when I watch it, I get emotional because it's just like he fought in that and he somehow survived. So it's all those people that didn't have the success of surviving. It's just very depressing, you know, all those young souls that went out there to protect their country and do what was right, and they just didn't make it home for them to see their families again, and it's very sad. This movie does a good job at conveying how important it is bringing the rest of them home. It's a good movie. Gladiator. Are you not entertained? I was entertained, let me tell you. The whole time you watch this, you're entertained. Ridley Scott, very hit or miss, yet when he hits, it's usually one of the better movies of the decade, and in this case, it was. It's 2000, probably the best movie of that year. Can't think of anything better. This is just a damn incredible movie. Russell Crowe was born to play Maximus Decimus Meridius. Braveheart. Mel Gibson just does everything right for me when it comes to filmmaking. I get that this is very historically inaccurate for the most part, yet I still don't care because of how awesome it is. I have Scottish roots in my DNA, so watching this, I feel very liberated. The Patriot, which is the better version of Braveheart for me, which is very probably controversial to say. And I don't know too many people that hold that opinion, but when I watch The Patriot, I just get lost in that time period. And I love this movie. You know, I really do. Heath Ledger's so good in this. Mel Gibson throwing his tomahawk around, killing a bunch of fucking redcoats. So badass. So awesome. And Jason Isaacs. You want to talk about a despicable villain in this movie? He is a prick. And you're happy when he dies, that's for sure. Apocalypto. Really damn good movie, but I don't rewatch it very often. There's just something about this that's not very rewatchable. It's really good, don't get me wrong. I think it's a very good movie, yet I just don't ever feel the urge to rewatch it. It's kind of hard to watch, to be honest. Schindler's List. Talking about hard to watch. This movie is painful to watch. I don't know how historically accurate it really is, because it seems very skewed in the Jews' favor, because it's made by a Jew, but I'm sure it was rough over there, to say the least. It's very hard to watch this movie, and I did a whole project on Oskar Schindler in high school, so I have a respect for the guy. Alexander. You won't hear too many people say this, but this is a movie I love, and Oliver Stone did a hell of a job going back, doing his research for Alexander the Great. It's pretty accurate to what we know, and he depicted a lot of the major battles that any of us Alexander historic fans would want to see. So it's nice to see those in the film. Some of them were cut, unfortunately, because we would have ended up with a 6-hour movie otherwise. I think now we would have benefited if they decided to give Oliver Stone money. He would have made a 6 or 7 part TV series where each for an hour, which would have just been glorious. It's a shame. We Were Soldiers. Another movie that the accuracy of this makes it so hard to watch that I don't know how often I'm going to watch this. There's a scene where they're trying to take, I can't even say it because of how hard it is to watch, but they just peel the skin off the dude's legs, and it's brutal. And it makes you really happy you're not part of that. 300. This is Sparta! Great movie. And Zack Snyder should have just done more shit like this. I don't know why he decided to ruin his legacy with all these movies he's made in the last 15 years, but this was just perfect. Just the perfect action movie. It's so badass. Testosterone pumping action the entire time. Gerard Butler was born to play this character. Like, he was born to play him. There was nobody else that he was meant to play. Troy. Now, controversial. I love Troy. And I just remember watching this the one day, and my dad walked in and just shook his head and kind of shit are you watching? He's like, is that a soap opera? Like, what are you watching? And it is. It's a soap opera for men, and it's great. I don't care what anybody says. I think I just dropped all these movies here, so that's going to be fun to pick up after. But I truly think Troy's a great movie. Obviously, the acting's over the top, but Wolfgang Peterson was going for that. You could tell he was going for the more historical, epic type acting of like the 50s, and I just love it. Eric Bana's great. Hector! Full Metal Jacket. Me love you long time. Me so honey. One of my favorite first half of a movie ever. Second half, though, I just don't really care. Like, it's not that it's bad. It's a great movie through and through, but the first half is where it's at. You know, when you're watching the boot camp and you see these characters kind of losing their minds, the ones, hey, Joker. Like, Private Pile loses his mind. And you get to see that all unfold, and it's very accurate to what I have heard from people who have been part of the military, is there's always a few eggs that crack. Maybe not that bad, but Fury, another movie that you either like it or you hate it, and I really like it. It's not historically that accurate, I'm sure. I haven't done a lot of research on Fury, but I just enjoy it. I think Brad Pitt's likable. Shia LaBeouf went super method with this, and you almost forget you're watching him. He's so good, ripping his tooth out. And John Bernthal's good. John Bernthal's hit or miss for me, but he's good in that. Black Hawk Down. Very simple story. Like, I was expecting some, because it's a longish movie, 2 hours, and I was expecting, yeah, it's got to be like a deep plot. No, they're going in, and that's it. They got this very easy objective, and the Black Hawk's down, and then another helicopter's down, and then they got to go save the rest of it. So it just becomes a whole mess. Good movie, though. And it's interesting to see Ewan McGregor play a coward. He's usually playing these, like, stoic, big tough guy when he's 150 pounds. So realistically, he'd be more like this in real life. Jarhead. I don't know if I mentioned this because I switched shelves. This was on my bottom shelf, but I moved it up to my top shelf to be with my war movies. I like Jarhead. It's good. It's a good movie, and Gyllenhaal does a really good job in it. My last war movie, Lone Survivor. Another movie that I think is like a one-time, every couple of years type thing. I can't see myself putting this in anytime soon. It's very depressing. But Ben Foster steals every movie he's in. I don't know what that guy, like, he just disappears. And then he comes back and makes a great movie and then disappears for 5 more years again. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I prefer this side of the case. I've seen a lot of people say this is shit. What movie were you watching? Like, you clearly didn't get the whole point of this movie. It's a sit-around, nostalgic throwback to the 60s. Like, this was not supposed to be some action-oriented. If people, I was bored. What the fuck were you expecting? It's a Tarantino movie. His movies are all dialogue. That's why they're good for the most part. Like, Hateful Eight is one of my favorite movies because it is just people sitting around talking about random shit. And it's 3 hours of that. It's so good. Samuel Jackson and Walton Goggins have some chemistry that I would have just never imagined actors having, especially the way the movie starts out with them at each other's throats. They end up buddies in the end, and I just love the cast. Kurt Russell and Jennifer Jason Leigh tied up together. It was a great idea. It's hilarious. Alright, I had to stop for a second, more like a day, to refresh, and it's been a couple days actually. So I'm going to finish the Tarantino shelf, and we'll carry on with the next shelf after that. So we got Django Unchained. Not one of my favorite Tarantino movies. A lot of people like this. I think DiCaprio and Christoph Waltz are really good in it, but the overall story, I'm just not a huge fan. Inglourious Bastards. It's another one, I get it. I can see what people like about it for the most part, but it's just not my thing. You know, it's kind of all over the place, and that's kind of Tarantino's thing. He loves to do the unstructured thing, and it just bothers me. I would have loved to have seen this play out in a normal way without it bouncing all over the place. Planet Terror and Death Proof, the Grindhouse 2 movie set. I don't really like Planet Terror that much, I'll be honest. It's okay. It's just a schlocky Robert Rodriguez zombie movie, but I really like Death Proof's first half, where Kurt Russell's like a badass, then the second half turned into a pussy, and it's not as good. But the first half's pretty good. Kill Bill 1 and 2. I prefer the first Kill Bill over the second one by a landslide. It's got a lot of rewatchability factor. But Tarantino loves to just turn every man in his movies into just creepy rapists. Like, everybody in Kill Bill is the grossest human possible. It's tough to watch at some parts. But Kill Bill 2 I've just never really liked. It's like 2.5 hours, and I just feel like it shouldn't have even been that long. Really, he should have trimmed it into 1 3-hour movie, both of these movies, but I don't know. He loved his movies too much. Pulp Fiction. I still think this is probably pound for pound his best movie, and because his friend helped him, Roger Avery. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it just feels like the script's a lot more clean than the stuff that came later from Tarantino for the most part. Like Hateful Eight aside, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm not a huge fan of any movie he made between Kill Bill or between this and I like Kill Bill, but until 2015, between this and that, I just wasn't a huge, it took him 21 years to make another movie that I connected to. The only movie I don't own of his on Blu-ray is Jackie Brown, and I don't think I'll ever get. I have it on DVD, and I don't like it that much. It's okay. Only really redeemable quality of it's Michael Keaton for me. Reservoir Dogs. I like this more than a lot of his other movies, and it's probably got a lot to do with Tim Roth, Harvey Keitel, and Steve Buscemi, and even Chris Penn. Chris Penn was such a damn good actor, and it's a shame he died as young as he did. Him and Sean Penn, and At Close Range in particular, that's a good one. But Chris Penn, great in this movie, and Harvey Keitel is one of my favorites. True Romance, probably my favorite Tarantino script, and I think it turned out better with him not directing it. Tony Scott did a good job fixing the things that Tarantino wanted to, like he wanted Clarence to die, and a lot of people like that for some reason, and it works for some movies, but I just think the whole point of this was for them to kind of live happily ever after, not have Clarence die and Alabama go off by herself. So that is the rest of Tarantino's movies, and we will hop into the movie shelf now. I'm just trying to, the movie shelf, yeah. This is my franchise shelf, so I'm trying to think of what one to grab first. Okay, we'll start with Rambo, I guess. Rambo 5, The Last Blood. I think this is a terrible movie. I really do. There's a couple good scenes at the end when he's basically Kevin McAllister all grown up and he's got the traps laid out underground. That's kind of cool, I guess, but other than that, the story's so stupid. And, yeah, it's a shame they didn't leave it on this high note with Rambo. The fourth one, directed, starring, and I don't. Maybe you're partially written by Stallone. I think he did a damn good job with this. And if you want to go out on a high note, like I said, you should have just gone out with this, because I cannot think of too many other legacy sequels that came out 20 years after the last sequel that was this good. It's one of the only ones, especially action. It's not very common. Rambo 3, not my favorite of any of the Rambo movies. Definitely the down movie of the original trilogy, if you want to call it that. It's pretty all over the place trilogy. This is just schlocky action, and the story's really stupid, and they were trying to nail home a message, and I don't know, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Rambo 2, The First Blood, Part 2, I should say. I really like this movie for what it is. Just a dumb action movie with a lot of action and killing, and that scene at the end where he comes back with the chopper and lights up everybody. Oh, it's glorious. It really is. He saved the POWs. And James Cameron helped write this. That's always the one thing that shocks me when I rewatch this every time, and you see written by James Cameron, Sylvester Stallone. It's like, really? Wow. First Blood, so the first Rambo. This is just a damn good movie. And I kind of want to see how bad the 3-hour cut of this is, the original cut that made Stallone have a rage quit moment and freak out. I don't blame him, and I think he did the cut himself to make this hour-and-a-half movie, and it's one of the better action, I wouldn't even put it in the action, one of the better just survival stories from the 1980s, 70s, 1981, right? 82. My bad. So we've got the Rocky franchise, 1 to 6. And I really like this 40th anniversary. I like that it's in a smaller. Every other version I've seen of this is like a huge big box set, and I like those for some, but I don't need to take up that much room for Rocky, do I? I love the Rocky movies for the most part. The first 4 in particular, I really like them. Rocky 4, by far my favorite, and I love the soundtrack. I listen to it all the time still, especially when I'm working out. The first and second are the best movies in terms of quality, and the third and fourth are the best in terms of just pure entertainment. Mr. T, you gotta love that. Terminator Salvation, probably the most overhated sequel ever. It's not that bad. You know, compared to some of the other shit we've been getting in the last 15 years, I know it's revisionist history, but it's truly not that bad. Especially Christian Bale in this movie just carries it on his back and runs through the desert with it. He's damn good as John Connor. The only real downfall for this is what's his face, Sam Worthington, the guy I always forget because he's just irrelevant. Such a bad actor. But Anton Yelchin as a young Kyle Reese, that was a really good choice. Damn shame he died young too. He was a great actor. Terminator 3. So this is basically Terminator 2 with a female robot, and like it was the safe bet for a Terminator sequel that came out 10 years, 12 years after Terminator 2. So I get why they did what they did. They didn't want to break the mold, but it just feels so repetitive when you watch this. It feels like you've seen it before because you have, and way better because James Cameron made it. A lot of the CGI in this does not hold up. It just doesn't hold up. They really relied on that early 2000s CG, and it just doesn't hold up. But Nick Stahl's not a bad John Connor. Terminator 2, still the best Terminator, best action movie ever made, in my opinion, and plenty of people's opinions who grew up watching this. I watched this so many times growing up that it's unhealthy. This and the first one would come home from school all the time. My background on my computer is still a Terminator 2 background. It always was growing up because this is just my favorite movie growing up. Love the characters, and Arnold was born to play the T-800. That is the character he was born to play. Terminator 1. I think this is such a great horror movie, and it's amazing that we get so much variety in the first two Terminator movies. You've got the horror version and the action version, basically the same movie. It's the same plot, sent back in time to kill somebody, and they have to find their way out and escape. I love them. These will forever be great, and you know, for as bad as the sequels are, it doesn't matter because the first two are so good. It makes up for it. War for the Planet of the Apes wasn't as good, and the box office numbers showed that. If you look at how much Dawn of the Planet of the Apes made, I remember back when I went to see that 2 or 3 times in the theater, I was pretty excited. It looked like it was going places, $700 million, and then this was just kind of a letdown. And I think this made half of what Dawn of the Planet, maybe a little over half. So you could just tell even the audience who'd seen it once was like, yeah, that's enough. We're not going back. Which, it sucks, and the new movie didn't make that much money either. It barely broke even, so I think Planet of the Apes will be going away for a while soon, which sucks, because I think, especially Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, this was a really, really, really unexpected good sequel. You know, I like Rise of the Planet of the Apes more. It's still my favorite Planet of the Apes movie aside from the 68. But this was just such an unexpected sequel. Like, I had no expectation going into this for anything that we got. And you get this amazing story about Caesar and these humans kind of becoming friends, and Koba trying to ruin that. Great movie, great sequel, and it'll be a while before we get good movies like that again. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, still it's one of the best reboots ever made, in my opinion. And I remember seeing the trailer for this with James Franco, and I remember my dad laughing because like, James Franco in a Planet of the Apes, but we went anyways and came out extremely surprised because they took it serious. There was a serious tone, and you really care about these monkeys. And never thought I'd say that, but I care about Caesar. You get to see him from birth until death. That's the really beautiful thing about the trilogy. It's the beginning of his life to the end. So we've got the Mad Max franchise. I showed you Road Warrior earlier, which is by far and away the best and my favorite Mad Max. But I got this 10 years ago for Christmas probably. And it took me a while to get into Mad Max, I'll be honest, because I only like one of them. So I never really felt like I need to watch the third one, Beyond Thunderdome, until, 5-6 years ago. I find Beyond Thunderdome pretty bad, to be honest. It feels like Hook. And Fury Road, the one everybody loves and thinks is amazing, I think it's just awful. So bad. I can't stand Charlize Theron. And all the behind-the-scenes drama just made me care even less. And I'm glad Furiosa bombed. I'm glad. That's what people get for asking for a sequel about a character nobody cared about. Lethal Weapon franchise. Today I had maybe the best moment I've had in years when I found out we were finally getting Lethal Weapon 5 directed by Mel Gibson. It's some of the best movie news I've heard in a long time. And it makes me damn happy because the first 3 in particular here are some of my good feel-good movies that I just put on whenever I want to have a good laugh and good time and want to have some good action on to appeal my eyes. This is I love it. I love Lethal Weapon, especially the first one. It's a great movie. Second one's great too, and the third one's not as great, and the fourth one I pretend it doesn't exist. I'm really hoping Chris Rock's not in the new one. I'm praying. I can't stand him. Die Hard 1 to 4, and I bought this for a reason. I don't want the fifth one, ever. Nowhere near my house do I want the fifth Die Hard. The first four, though, I'm alright with owning. Barely the fourth, but the first three in particular, 1 and 3, will always hold up as amazing action movies. I think the third one is like one of the better action sequels ever, and people give it some respect, but come on, you know you watch it a lot. It's one of those rewatchable action movies, Simon Says. And even Incredibles referenced the cop scene, right? Like, they had the kids' movies with references to Die Hard 3. First one will definitely be the one people talk about most. It's a great movie, and people like to pretend it's a Christmas movie. And Die Hard 2, forgettable sequel in an airport. I was never crazy about Die Hard 2. But Die Hard 4, you want to talk about straight-to-DVD garbage? It's bad. It really is. Dirty Harry 1 to 4. I don't own the fifth one. Again, I just don't really want to. But I really like 3 of these 4 movies. The first one, Magnum Force, and Sudden Impact. I thought The Enforcer was straight up bad. Like, I was worried. When I first watched The Enforcer and I still had a movie to go in this, I was worried. But Magnum Force and Dirty Harry, I'm going to talk about 2 classic movies that people will always reference as forever. As long as Clint Eastwood is still being remembered in film, which probably will be forever, you'll get Dirty Harry references and nods to it in other films, and yeah, Dirty Harry's great. I love Clint Eastwood. I've already raved about him in my other parts of this, I think. Indiana Jones 1 to 4. 5 does not exist, as far as I'm concerned. You see a common theme here. Like, 4 usually is bad. Like 4 here is bad. It's not very good. But 5 is so bad that I don't even want to buy it. That's 90% of the case with these. It's like I'm done at 3. Maybe 4 I'll watch. 5 I'm done. Indiana Jones, I love the first 3 so much. You want to talk about a perfect trilogy, basically, front to back. You've got it right there. And the fourth one, it gets overhated, but I can see a lot of the issues. It's not a great movie. It's just, I grew up watching it, so I guess it has some more guilty pleasure value to it than most. Jurassic Park 3, definition of guilty pleasure. Like, I grew up watching this most Friday nights after school, and we'd have pizza or whatever, and we'd watch Jurassic Park 3. So I have fond memories of watching this. And this was always the action-packed Jurassic Park movie, where basically front to back, it's just non-stop action. Not much of a story. And this is directed to Jim Johnson, the guy who made Captain America. So he went from like a mediocre action movie to a pretty good one. The Lost World, you can tell Spielberg was obligated to make this because he has no passion whatsoever in this movie behind the camera. It is such a boring movie to watch, story-wise, visually, everything. I hate this sequel. I hate it. I really do. I fucking hate this movie. I always have, and as I grew up, I really realized how much I hated it. The first Jurassic Park is just a masterpiece when it comes to blockbuster filmmaking. This got me and so many other people into dinosaurs when I probably would have never had the interest otherwise, but seeing Alan Grant dig up bones at the beginning and pretend to scratch open the kid's stomach, I was like, I might have some interest here. I might be interested. And Spielberg was on top of his game considering he was filming Schindler's List at the same time. So talk about contrasting productions. You've got one about these fun beat dinosaur movie to the fucking Holocaust. So it's like, yeah, we've got some varying emotions. So it's a good thing that turned out as good as it did. Lord of the Rings, theatrical versions, the trilogy. I love these movies, especially the first one, but I just love how lost you get in this world. It does not happen very often in a movie where you can watch it and you just want to go there. You want to travel to where they are, be part of it, follow them on their journey, and by the end you feel like you're almost their friend. So that's how you know the story's done right. And I still think the visual effects hold up extremely well, considering the first one came out 23 years ago. So forever will be great movies. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, terrible. Like, another really terrible, but I had to own it because I wanted to have the trilogy. 4 and 5 don't exist. I'm not even going to watch them. They don't exist. I'm sorry. They don't exist. The third one was bad enough. Did we really need some giant girl with ink in her teeth being like 30 feet tall? Like, did we need that? Really? I'm not going to go on a Pirates of the Caribbean rant, but this movie just felt so unnecessarily long. It's 2 hours and 40-something minutes, and it's just, for the most part, unnecessary. Pirates of the Caribbean at Dead Man's Chest. I like parts of this, but also I'd say about 85% of it I don't. Maybe, okay, not 85, 75% I don't. I gotta fix this case, or get a new one, damn it. I don't care about the characters very much. Like Will Turner, such a hollow character, where if anybody but Orlando Bloom was playing him, I don't think anyone would care. But because he's charming and Orlando Bloom, you care. And same with Jack Sparrow. He's like a really good character because Johnny Depp's playing him, but there's not much there, you know? Like, there's not much there. He's just drunk all the time, and that's it. The first Pirates of the Caribbean is a genuinely good movie, in my opinion. I think this is a really good action-adventure. And it's just, I wish we got more of this, you know? A little seriousness, some fun, but also you just take the source material a little more serious. It just feels like the second and third one were like a cartoon come to life. This one, there's some grittiness. It's a little grimy, like the prison cell, like that whole thing in the prison cell. That feels a little more piratey. It just feels like the other ones don't have any, you know, griminess. Besides the guy with the wooden eyeball. We've got the Bourne Ultimatum. Sliding out. The Bourne Ultimatum. I gotta be honest, I gotta rewatch this. It's probably been 10 years since I've rewatched the second and third Bourne movies, because the Paul Greengrass direction of shaking the camera violently really bothers me, and every time I get 5 minutes into these, I just gotta turn them off. As soon as I got old enough to realize the shaky cam and why it was always bothering me, yeah, I stopped watching the Bourne movies. The second and third. Like the Bourne Supremacy, like I like some scenes in this, I do, that I can remember, like when Marie dies. I like some scenes, some good action, but again, the Paul Greengrass, like, do you need to violently shake your camera so we can't tell what's going on? Does it make you feel better? The first Bourne movie is so good, and I'm glad we have this at least, because this has one of the best chase scenes ever, I'd say. And I always watch it, and the song that they use for the chase scene, they use it in Collateral too, so it's like it's a double good reason to like this movie. But the Bourne trilogy overall, I'm not a fan, and the fourth one, no, we don't talk about the fourth one. The original trilogy, what more has to be said? You can see my Star Wars reviews, you know I love these movies, and I would like to buy a version of them someday with the despecialized effects on Blu-ray. I'm sure it'll cost me a fortune, but I'd just like to say I own them. The prequels, not going to sit here and pretend they're good. I'm just not. I'm not delusional, and I'm not an idiot, but I grew up liking them, and there's definitely things about these that I enjoy, visually, you know, emotionally, but if I didn't grow up watching these, I can pretty much guarantee I'd hate them. Like, thoroughly hate them. Maybe not Revenge of the Sith, but definitely Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Misa Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. Probably wouldn't have been a happy camper. The Mummy 3. It's a pretty, you know, run-of-the-mill Mummy sequel. I was expecting a lot worse, but it was okay. It was harmless. And it was made by the guy who made the first Fast and Furious, Rob Cohen. So I was expecting real garbage. But I got a little more than I needed. You know, you got Yetis. You know, that made me happy. Even though the Yetis look really bad, not too many Yeti movies around. The Mummy Returns. Talk about really bad sequels. This probably is up at the top for me, but at least the redeemable qualities of this outweigh the others. You've got Brendan Fraser. So that alone, you're ahead of the other movies that would be on that list. The visual effects in this are so bad that it's offensive. Like, even at the time, it was bad. I remember watching this as a 3 or 4-year-old kid and just being shocked. It's like, we have the PS2 downstairs that looks the same as this. Like, what the fuck's going on? It doesn't look good. CGI does not hold up. And the real, like I said, redeeming qualities are basically just Brendan Fraser and The Rock being in it for 4 minutes at the beginning so they can make the Scorpion King movie, which is better than this. The first Mummy. Bring me to Egypt. God, I love this movie. I really do. And I pushed this off forever. Like, I saw the other one somehow before seeing this as a 15, 16-year-old. But when I finally got around to watching this, I knew what I was missing. Because it's an Indiana Jones light. It's very Indiana Jones-esque. So that's up my alley. I love adventure movies. I loved Egypt Explorer. I love any archaeology or any type of that kind of stuff. So this is just right up your alley if you love Egyptology especially. And Rachel Weisz is very attractive. I'm just going to say that. Bad Boys. Yeah, I love the first two Bad Boys. Not going to ever buy the sequels because it's just turned into a soap opera where everybody's kid somehow is connected, and like fucking Will Smith has a Mexican kid that's a drug. I'm sorry. It's gotten to the point where it's obscene. I will still probably see Bad Boys 4 at some point coming up. I know it's out now, but I'll get there. I love these first two. Michael Bay just has a flair for the visual. He's basically Tony Scott, but from the 2000s and late 90s. Like he has like a very distinct visual way of filming movies. When you watch them, you're like, yep, that's a Michael Bay shot. And I kind of like it. And a lot of people trash on him, but the slow-mos and all that, it's very early 2000s, and it brings me back to being a kid. So maybe it's nostalgia talking, but I still enjoy the Bad Boys movies. We've got Men in Black 3, which it's got its good parts, and Josh Brolin plays a very, very good young K, Tommy Lee Jones. But this feels like a fan fiction. Like, it feels like if you went on Reddit at 3 in the morning and you read this script, you wouldn't be surprised, is what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like a real movie. Men in Black 2 is kind of in the same category where it just feels so obscene that a lot of this is so beyond weird that you can't really get behind it. The first movie's not normal. It's a fucking alien movie, but this is just, Frank, people get annoyed by him. I like Frank, but I don't know. The story's really stupid. Tommy Lee Jones was in love with an alien all this time ago, and blah, 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 and he had a kid, and it's like, okay, it's kind of stupid. Men in Black, the first one, I love this movie. And I waited too long to get into the Men in Black movies, where I waited till I was like 21 or 22 to see these, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I regret it, because I'm an alien guy. I'm really obsessed with the things that are unknown beyond our reach. So it's a shock to me that I never got around to those, but I did, and I liked them. So good thing I got into them. Harry Potter 1 to 8. Did I hear a rumor they're remaking Harry Potter? Like, we've gotten to that point where we're that desperate. We're remaking franchises that made billions of dollars that are not even that old. Like, if you're remaking something from like 1927, I'd be like, okay, well, that makes sense. It's probably time for an update. But this is from 2011, the last one. It's not long ago at all. Like, not even close. So I find that very stupid if that's the route they're gonna go. Because these movies are not that bad. What are you going to do better with remakes besides add diversity and spice it up? Because we know they're not going to make any better movies than they made. I'm not even a huge Harry Potter fan, but just leave them. They're good. Like, they're good for what they are. If you're a fan of them, you love them. I love the first 2 or 3 in particular. After that, I kind of tailed off, but first 3, those are childhood staples in my household. 1.21 gigawatts, great Scott! I just make it sound like a grandma. Great Scott, Marty! Back to the Future trilogy. I think this is probably pound for pound, I've said that a few times, my favorite trilogy of all time. The first Back to the Future is my favorite movie ever, so, I mean, that alone probably propels it to be my favorite trilogy. Back to the Future 2 gets no respect, man. Like, I think it's one of those great sequels that people just kind of dismiss as, it's a kind of a retread, and gotta watch it again. Same with the third one. The third one's a great love story about Doc. It's got a few of the similar beats, obviously, but that's what's great about these movies. You know what you're gonna get going in. They're going to a time period. They're gonna have to travel back somehow, and I love it. Leave this trilogy be. When Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis pass away, leave this, okay? Don't touch this. This is sacred. So hopefully their kids somehow own it or something, because please never ruin Back to the Future, please. This is the rest of these movies are all James Bond, so you'll be sitting here for a while, but buckle up. Skyfall, it's the last Daniel Craig movie I'll probably ever own, unless I find Spectre for cheap enough. I don't like Spectre or any of his movies for the most part, and Skyfall falls into that. I find this kind of shit for the most part. Not that great. The real saving grace, Javier Bardem as the villain, but everything besides that, I don't like it. I just don't. Quantum of Solace is just terrible, and we all know it is. I don't even want to pretend for a second that... I remember when I first watched this as a teenager, maybe even a little younger than a teenager, and it just ends. It's like an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. Like, that's it? Like, Casino Royale, I think I watched them back to back. Casino Royale is 2 hours and 30 minutes. Like, it's a real movie with 3 acts that are very distinct, and then this one is just, you know, you're in, you're out. You're done. And, yeah, the villain sucks. Everything about it sucks. I'm not a fan. Casino Royale, I like it, but it's not my favorite Bond. It's not even, it might have been 10th on my list. I'm not crazy about it. Other people say it's their favorite Bond. It's nothing like, you know, a James Bond to me. It's just an action movie with a guy playing James Bond in it. It doesn't feel like a spy thriller to me whatsoever. The opening's good, though. I'll give the movie that. I like that opening scene. Die Another Day. This was previously the lowest point, according to most, and then the newest one came out. And this looks a lot better now, doesn't it? Because James Bond doesn't die. So you can hate it all you want, but at least they didn't shit all over the source material. Oh yeah, we're gonna kill our main character. No, this movie is entertaining. It's not very good, obviously, but at least you get what you went for. You're entertained for the most part. I can see why the expectations were high, because most of the Bond movies previous to that were pretty good. The World Is Not Enough does not get enough respect, in my opinion. This is my favorite Brosnan Bond and one of my favorite period. The real downside, and let's just get that out of the way. Denise Richards is just flat out terrible. Like, I'm sorry, she's supposed to be a scientist, really? Like, come on. But she's hot, so she got the role, and she was really popular at the time, so I get it. And Pierce Brosnan, like I said, he's just born to play James Bond, man. He is the definition of uber cool and charismatic. Tomorrow Never Dies. I like this, but I also think that the villain and stuff are just kind of weak. Carver probably would have been a better villain in a movie today with the things we're dealing with now with technology. I think it came out a little too soon. But, you know, it is what it is. I like the bike chase, and I like the scene in the parking garage. So there's a couple things that stand out for me in that movie. GoldenEye. Everybody's favorite Brosnan Bond, not mine. I like a lot of stuff in this, but at the same time, I don't know. It's not my favorite. I'll just say that. I do like it though, and it's a non-stop action movie for the most part. There's a lot of action, so if you're a James Bond action fan, probably be in your top. If you like, you know, less dialogue is what I'm saying. License to Kill, my favorite James Bond movie. Period. It doesn't get better than this, and it's a damn shame that Timothy Dalton didn't get to play at least, you know, one more time James Bond, because he's my favorite James Bond, and I think that he was just perfect for the role. Where he kind of dark, you can still trust him, but there's an edge to him, just like in the novels and the books. Like he's a fucked up person. Drop that. Good, because it's bad. For Your Eyes Only. I think this is just such a forgettable James Bond. There's a couple in there where it's like, what even happens in that movie? I couldn't even tell you. If you held a gun to my head, I wouldn't be able to really tell you what even happens except for the last 20 minutes of this movie. It just out the other ear. Gotta rewatch them. Moonraker. You know, I like the stuff on Earth more than the stuff on the moon in this, which is probably not a good thing. But the stuff on the moon, I kind of just zone out. You know, the space battle is really stupid. And they brought Jaws back because he was such a fan favorite. They just do nothing with him. Like, he does nothing. It's like, wow, there's Jaws. The Man with the Golden Gun, one of my favorite Bond movies, and Christopher Lee is probably a big reason of that. He's just born to play a villain. Like, he's just so good at it, and I love the tension of the last scene where you're walking through the maze, the trap, basically, where it's like a shootout gallery, basically, with all those dummies. Love it. And that too. Live and Let Die. Nah, not one of my favorite Bond movies by any means, but, you know, it's not an offensive movie. It didn't do anything wrong. I kind of like the Harlem aspect of this. I like that each James Bond is very distinct, especially the older ones. You had your settings, and that's what made it individually different. Thunderball. I like Thunderball. I like the opening scene a lot with the jetpack. That shit will always be stuck in my head. I feel like I'm missing something else, like a major scene that I'm just not remembering. But I like this movie. Sean Connery, damn good James Bond. He's not my favorite, but I think he's a damn good James Bond, and I just love him in most movies, period. Goldfinger's probably my second favorite Sean Connery Bond. It's a good story, and you can tell there's a lot of inspiration in the Austin Powers movies from this one. This got more of like a comedic tone to me. I don't know if I was just high while I was watching this, but I laughed a lot. But I love that shootout scene where they're shooting targets. That's probably my favorite. Or the golf scene. That's good too. From Russia with Love, the best Sean Connery Bond, and a lot of people still have this at number one, and I can see why. The train fight, probably the most memorable fight in James Bond, and just Robert Shaw. That guy was just such a great actor. Like you just, we don't have talent like that in films anymore. And Dr. No. Yeah, for what it is, the first movie, it's good. When I watched this only a couple years ago for the first time, and I was expecting a lot worse. So only really annoying thing is the theme plays at the most wrong times of this. Like I feel like there's it's this one, right, where he's in the room checking for like bugs, and all you hear it's like, yeah, I don't think you know how to use that theme yet, but they got there. So that's the franchise shelf. God, that just takes it out of me every time. So I will be back to talk about the next shelf next.